phone because I realized when I introduced Lisa, you couldn't see her. So I want you to see her. She made me throwing something at me in a minute because she looked at me like, when I did that. All right, without further ado, we're going to get started on this. I think you have a video for us, right?
An audio.
An audio. Okay, an audio first. So we'll get started. Here you go, Lisa.
Thank you, Tracy. It's going to take me a minute to get used to this microphone. Anyway, besides doing health inspections, a lot of my job is doing training. And what I do is a lot of training for different groups, but also people who do my job as well. So usually, and I do a lot of training for people who work in restaurants and managers and things like that, and people like that. So usually before, when I start a training class, I want to make sure people know how important food safety is. And I've got an audio tape that I'm going to play for you guys. And it's of a woman who survived botulism. And it's her story, and she talks about it and the effects it has on her life. So it just will emphasize how important food safety is. So while you eat, you can listen to this.
We'd like to share the story of an Oregonian who survived. This is Carolyn Robb, Extension Foods and Nutrition Specialist at Oregon State University. Our story begins in June 1989, when Linda, a 49-year-old Eastern Oregon woman, traveled out of state on vacation. A restaurant meal triggered her life and death struggle with botulism. Health authorities speculate that the culprit was a potato that was baked long before it was served. The bacteria that cause botulism are in the environment. They produce spores that survive cooking. When conditions are right, the spores grow and produce a toxin. That toxin leads to the symptoms that Linda now describes.
A year ago, my husband and I left on vacation. It was on Father's Day, and it was a beautiful day, and we were having a very good time. We went to Winnemucca, we gambled, we just played around. Late that night, I was hungry. There was only one place open, so we went into it. I ordered a baked potato. The baked potato was tan in color. It was not done all the way through, and it wasn't hot. But I never thought anything about it because I've served those kind of potatoes before. I have had those at home before. I did not know that you could die from that. So I ate it. I griped about it. Not that it would have mattered a whole heck of a lot, because all you have to do is touch your fork to that potato and put it in your mouth and you're dead. Okay, this is one of the most potent poisons that there is anywhere. The next afternoon, I'm still feeling pretty good. About noon, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I noticed that I cannot see very well. My equilibrium is a little bit off, but I thought I was just tired. We went onto Ontario. We shopped around a little while, and I kept getting worse and worse. So I decided maybe we better come on home. By 8 o'clock at night, when we got home, my eyes were almost closed. I couldn't open them. I couldn't figure out what in the world was wrong. My equilibrium was really bad. But I went in and I went to bed because I thought, I've just got the flu. Surely there's nothing serious wrong. Inside, I was scared to death because I knew something was bad. So the morning, I stayed all night. I slept all night. And towards morning, I had to wake Daryl up. I was becoming paralyzed on the left side, and my tongue was swelling. I thought that I had had a stroke. He took me in down here, and they run a lot of tests. They knew right off the bat it wasn't a stroke, but they had no idea what was wrong. They were in contact with Bend, and in the middle of the afternoon, now this is Tuesday afternoon, the helicopter came and took me to Bend. It is due to the helicopter and a doctor in Bend that I'm alive. When they got me there, the doctor was waiting. He took one look. He knew what it was. He had gone through all of these medical books, and it was the only thing that fit what I had. He ordered the antitoxin right then. He did not delay. He didn't even wait for the results to come back. They put me on the table. By this time, I cannot see anymore. My eyes are totally closed. I'm laying there, and they're checking me over, and suddenly, my diaphragm paralyzed. I cannot breathe. You talk about scared. I kept trying, and it wouldn't work. They grabbed me, and they shoved a tube down my nose into my lungs so I could then put me on the machine so I could breathe. They couldn't put it through the throat at that time because my throat swelled out almost even with my shoulders. My tongue swelled so huge it hung out of my mouth. It wouldn't even fit in it anymore. My face turned a dark color. My daughter said that I looked like a dead piece of meat laying there. That hurt when they run that thing down. Man, that hurt. It tore all the way down. Inside, I screamed, but by that time, my throat was paralyzed. I could make no sound at all. I could not move. I totally become paralyzed. I laid there on the bed. That's all I could do is lay there. I could hear, and my mind was very clear. I wish it hadn't have been. It would have been so much easier if it hadn't have been. But I could hear everything going on around me. I heard the doctor telling my family that there was only a 20% chance that I would survive this, and that if I did survive, I would be paralyzed for up to 6 months, maybe longer. I lay there and I thought about that. I thought about the pain I was causing my family. I thought about the money it was costing. It was going to cost us everything that we had. And I thought, I don't want to live anymore. If I could just die, not only is it better for my family, but I won't hurt. I'll be free of this pain because this is a very painful disease. This is not like paralysis where you have an accident and you lose feeling. You don't lose feeling with this. It's like a burn, the doctor said. As the nerves are destroyed, they hurt. And later on when they're growing back, they hurt. And they hurt for a great long time afterwards. In fact, last night I woke up, the bottom part of my body was hurting still because some of those nerves are still going back. Every time that they had to turn me over was agony. Even touching me hurt. They turned me about every 2 hours, and if they laid my head in the wrong position, I was in agony until they moved me again. I could not tell them that I hurt. I couldn't say a thing about it. I could just lay there and suffer. I think I would have gone crazy, except that my family and the doctors and nurses were pulling so hard for me. They were working so hard to get me well. Because they know so little about this disease, they know so little about what it will do to you, they did not dare put me to sleep when they had to operate on me. When they finally were able to put this into my throat, the doctor told me he knew I could hear. He knew I understood everything that went on around me. He told me, he said, I can't put you to sleep. And he says, this is going to be very uncomfortable. But he says, we'll do it fast and do the best we can. So they gave me a shot of Demerol. They gave me a shot of Valium. And they cut a hole in my throat and they shoved a tube in. It hurt. I guarantee you it hurt. But I couldn't say anything and I could not move. I just lay there. I laid there for 3 months till I was finally able to breathe some on my own. And I got it back. And then they shipped me to Portland where I had to learn everything all over again. Because when those nerves are destroyed, all of the programming from your brain to the rest of your body is destroyed. So you learn everything all over again. Stuff you take for granted. Stuff like moving your fingers, stuff like moving your hands, stuff like, even though I was no longer paralyzed, I could not move them. An exercise they had me doing was touching my fingers here. You'd be surprised how hard that is to do until your mind is programmed to do it. I was just like a newborn baby, except instead of like a baby, they can make sound, they can eat, had taught me to feed myself. By this time, they had taken the feed tube from my nose and had put one into my stomach, which again, they were unable to give me any type of thing to put me to sleep. They cut a hole in my stomach and they shoved a tube inside there. They taught me how to feed myself that way because they weren't even sure I would ever be able to eat again. Well, I finally am able to eat, but not a whole lot. I do not have any saliva. I cannot cry because I have no tears. They don't know if I will ever get these back because not enough people have ever lived over it to even know this. I have high blood pressure from it. I am weak. I have problems with my lungs. And I have a problem with the scarring inside here. Someday I will have to have this cut open again and have it removed. This time, hopefully, I will be asleep when I do it. Something I didn't talk about this morning, you talked about staph infections. I've received one of those because I had the tube down my throat through my nose for so long. It caused a staph infection. And in January, I had to go in and they had to cut up through my upper lip, pull my face back, and scraped everything inside because it was eating into the bone. Now this has cost over $250,000 already. I have no idea how much more. All because somebody got careless and I ran desperate with food. I beg everybody that is hearing this, don't get careless with your food. Because don't cause somebody else the agony and the hurt that it caused my family and myself. Thank you.
Linda?
Okay, first I apologize. I really kind of wasn't thinking about that y'all were going to be eating when you heard that. But it's what I start most of my training presentations off with, because usually when I do training, it's for people in food service. So I want them to know how important what they are doing. Oops, no, wrong one. I'm not doing that. I want them to know how important working in food service is. And so it really, and sometimes when I do my inspections, if I have a couple people, okay. When I do my inspections, sometimes if I have a little extra time or people are standing around, I'll also let them listen to that. Because a lot of times people that work in food service, let's face it, they're not the most educated, they're not the highest paid people, but they need to realize what they're doing can kill somebody. So to me, that audio is pretty vivid about what can happen. But what I'm going to talk about today is really not what I do in restaurants, but it's going to also be how what you do at home can relate. Because usually when we get calls, and people will say, oh, I got sick from eating at this restaurant. And the first thing will be like, well, where else have you eaten? What else did you eat that day? And they're like, oh, I know it didn't happen at home. It happened at a restaurant. Well, you know, you can get sick from somebody's house as well, too. So what is a foodborne illness? It's a disease that's transmitted to people from food. Who's most at risk for foodborne illness? It's people with a weakened immune system. So the very young, because their immune system's just building up, the very old or the older, because their immune system's starting to break down, or people who are immunocompromised, people who are on medicine or have an illness where their immune system is compromised. So the CDC estimates that 1 out of 6 Americans get sick a year from foodborne illness. 128,000 people are hospital and 3,000 people die from foodborne illnesses a year. But a lot of times, most foodborne illnesses, now botulism affects the central nervous system. So that's a little more more extreme. But usually when people get sick, you know, they feel nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and they have it for a day or two and they get over it. And they could think they just had the flu, or, you know, they ate something that didn't agree with them. But for people with weakened systems, they could end up in the hospital, or they could end up dying. So the CDC has identified 5 risk factors on what the leading causes are foodborne illness. And we're going to talk a little bit about this at home, or in general terms, but this is what we now base our inspections on. When I go in and inspect a restaurant, it's not really looking at if the floors are dirty or if the ceilings are dirty. And that's what it used to be. You'd look around and write down what, what's dirty or what's not right. Well, now what we do, we base our inspections on these 5 risk factors. Purchasing food from an approved source, failing to cook food to the right temperature, using contaminated equipment, poor personal hygiene, and holding food at the wrong temperature. Because these factors are what can make people sick. A place being dirty, nobody wants to eat at a dirty place, but that's not going to directly lead to somebody getting sick. Food not being cooked at the right temperature, that could directly lead to somebody getting sick. So viruses or noroviruses, one of the leading causes of foodborne illness. On average, 19 to 21 million cases a year are caused by norovirus, and that means about 1 out of every 15 Americans are sick from norovirus. And the thing with norovirus, you hear a lot about it because it just takes a very little bit to get people sick. It's easily spread by person to person or with contaminated food surfaces. But one of the easiest ways that people spread norovirus is the fecal oral route. Somebody, you know, it's kind of gross, I'm sorry you're eating, but, you know, somebody has a virus, they go to the restroom, they don't wash their hands well enough, and they touch something else, somebody touches it, and it's just spread. So, one of the biggest things in food safety, one of the biggest things in food safety, and one of the biggest things when we do inspections, or whether you're at home, is just washing your hands, using good personal hygiene. And it sounds so easy. But believe me, it's not. And getting people just to wash their hands is like could prevent so much. Another big thing that we try to promote is making sure people don't work when they're sick. Or, in the case at home, don't handle food when you're sick. Because, as gross as it might sound, you know, if you've got diarrhea, you know, you might wash your hands, but you might not wash them well enough. And then you go, and it's just so easy. You know, you touch something and somebody else touches it, and it's just viruses are easy to transfer. So, in food service operations now, we require a health agreement. It doesn't have to be written, but each facility has where their employee agrees to let the owners know if they're sick or experiencing certain illnesses, and if they're experiencing certain illnesses, they should not be working in the food service. Some, they even require a doctor's note to come back to work. But, like I said, preventing viruses is as easy as just washing your hands. One of the other risk factors is storing. Did I skip some? No. Is storing foods properly. You make sure you keep your raw food away from your ready-to-eat foods. So, basically, whether it's in your grocery cart or at home, you don't want your raw food stored where it can drip on something that's not going to be cooked. Cooking doesn't kill all bacteria, but it kills a lot of them. So you're better off to store your ready-to-eat foods above your raw food. Put your raw foods on the bottom. Also, some things that you can do, like with your cutting boards, we recommend that, in a restaurant, they have a different cutting board, different colors. Maybe a yellow cutting board for poultry or a green for vegetables, and that just gives an extra barrier or an extra step to prevent cross-contamination. And when you cook food, you never use the same plate. Like if you're cooking on a grill, you never put your raw food and then cook your food. You never put it back on the same place unless you've washed it, because the bacteria are still on the plate from when the raw food or from the raw juices. One of the biggest things, way to prevent bacterial contamination is to make sure you cook your food to the right temperature. And different bacteria require different temperatures for them to be killed at. Like salmonella, which is often found in chicken, it takes temperatures of 165 degrees Fahrenheit to kill salmonella. And hamburger could contain E. coli. It has to be cooked to 155 degrees. So the only way you really know if food is being cooked to the right temperature is to actually use a thermometer and take temperatures. A lot of people will cook something till it's, it's not raw inside or doesn't look pink inside. And sometimes in restaurants, I've said, so what'd you cook your hamburgers to? Well, until it's not pink. Well, what temperature is that? Well, they said, well, we don't know. Well, the only way you actually really know is to use your thermometer and take temperatures. Now, bacteria grow best in a warm, moist environment. And so, basically, you keep your cold food at 41 or below, and your hot foods at 135 or above. So, anywhere in between the 141 and 135 is considered the food temperature danger zone. So, you keep your hot food hot and your cold food cold. So, just like when they're preparing food to serve, they might prepare it in advance, but as long as they keep it hot, bacteria are not rapidly growing. But once it sits out for a long period of time, food has a lag time, or bacteria has a lag time, and once, about 4 hours, it gets out of that lag phase, and then it starts rapidly producing. So food can sit out for a little bit of time, but you don't leave food sitting out all day. Now, sometimes people will say, well, I go to my mother's house and my grandmother always fixed chicken and it sit out on the table all day long. How come we never got sick? Well, people develop what's called a herd immunity, and their system gets kind of used to certain things. And that's why sometimes when people don't do right, their system kind of adjusts to it. And that's why it can happen. So like I said, you know, you've got to cook your food to the right temperature. And the only way you really know that is to take a temperature with your thermometer. And that's the only way you can be assured. Also with egg whites, you want them to be firm. Now, what we recommend, or in some places, like in the hospital, there's certain things they can't do because they're basically serving to a compromised population. So basically, if they were to use a recipe that required raw eggs, they would have to use pasteurized eggs because they couldn't serve raw eggs to a population, to a compromised population. Now, you might go into a restaurant and now say you really like your hamburgers medium rare. Well, it used to be you could not do that. Now you can, but you should see on the menu, there's a little disclaimer at the bottom that might say, improperly cooked food could lead to foodborne illness. And it probably has a star beside the item that's cooked and an asterisk beside that little disclaimer. And that way, facilities can serve undercooked food. It's just like, that's how they can serve sushi, or that's how they can serve over easy eggs, because they've got that little reminder on there, or the warning on there. So when you reheat food, you should always bring food to a boil, because, let's see, in this, the reason why is you want to make sure your food's getting out of that temperature danger zone. Now, some of the cooking temperatures that, just a few that I wrote down, like your poultry, that probably has salmonella or could have salmonella in it. So you would cook it to 165. Your ground meat's 155, your pork's 145, or your casseroles and soups or things that have lots of different things, you would cook to 165 degrees. And that basically would kill most bacteria that can be killed by heat. So then you think about your food. You've cooked your hot, say a thing of soup or stew, and you've gotten it up to 165 degrees and everything. Well, you've got a lot left over. So basically you're going to cool it down, and you want to bring it out of that danger zone as fast as possible. And that's where a lot of problems come. And basically with food service operations, one of the biggest problems they have are when foods are cold. And a lot of places don't do that anymore. A lot of places, you know, at the end of the day, they don't say they're leftovers. And places have started using portion control to really find out what they need, because cooling down, one, it's a pain if you do it correctly, and two, you really need to make sure your food's been cooled within the proper period of time. Basically, you want to get it from between once it hits 135, that's when you really should start making sure you try to cool it down fast, and it can be hard to do. When you're thawing foods, you never just let them sit out at room temperature. The reason why, you think about that danger zone, remember, anywhere between 135 and 41 is in that danger zone. So say you've got a turkey, and you want it to thaw out in order to cook. Well, if you let it sit out, basically the outside's going to thaw out first. So that if you leave it sitting out long enough for the inside to thaw, the outside's going to get warm. So bacteria can start building in that outer layer, and then that would contaminate the rest of it. So the safe way to thaw food is in the refrigerator. You can use running cold water, not above 70, or you can put it in the microwave and thaw it and then cook it right afterwards. Like I already said, your hot food's 135 or above, and your cold food's 41 or below. Another thing you want to do is you want to make sure you keep everything clean. You want to clean your kitchen, because you don't want to give the bacteria a place to survive. You need to be careful when you use wiping cloths or rags to wipe off, because basically you have a cloth and say you wipe down a surface. Well, all that's doing is getting the bacteria, and the bacteria growing in that cloth, and then it gives it a place to live. And then you take that cloth and you wipe it down somewhere else. So a lot of times we recommend use paper towels, because then you use it and throw it away. That way, that's why I like in restaurants, when they wash their hands, they have to use paper towels. They can't use cloths or towels or anything, because bacteria, they like that warm, moist environment, and so they would just grow in that cloth, and then the next person that wouldn't use the cloth, they would just be getting bacteria from them. So you can consider using a paper towel to wipe off your surfaces or to clean your towels. There was a little bit more that I forgot. that I was having some trouble with my presentation. But one of the 5 risk factors, if you remember, is to purchase food from an approved source. Now, an approved source, you know, your grocery stores or your wherever. But somebody selling food on the side of the road, yeah, they might be approved, but let's face it, the chances of them doing things right as compared to your grocery store, you know, you gotta weigh out your chance. So that's why we now look at your 5 risk factors, and that's why in our inspections we concentrate on looking at those 5 things instead of, oh, their windows dirty or their bathrooms dirty. Yeah, you want a facility to have a clean place, but you want to look at what's going to make people sick. So that's pretty much all I've got for y'all. Do you have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
In a restaurant, do they clean the table with a rag, then they go to the next table and use the same rag?
What they should have a bucket that they keep their cloths in. So when their cloths aren't in use, they have a sanitized bucket. And basically the sanitized bucket should kill the bacteria that are growing. So when they're using it, you know, they should take it out of the bucket of sanitizing solution and wipe the table down and then put it in the bucket again. But they used to be, you know, you'd see cloths sitting out all over the place. And now, hopefully not so much. Yeah.
I've never heard of pasteurized egg.
You haven't?
No.
Well, a pasteurized egg is like milk or whatever. It's a lot of the liquid eggs are usually pasteurized, but now it's heat treated to kill the bacteria. And they've also got shelled eggs that are pasteurized now.
I have a question.
Okay.
I fight this battle all the time at family gatherings.
Okay.
Once you're finished with dinner and you have leftovers, are we supposed to leave them sitting out on the counter until they're room temperature before we put them in the refrigerator?
No. They can cool, I mean, basically the rule of thumb in inter-family gatherings, people aren't going to sit there and take temperatures. But they can cool down a little bit, but once they get to 135, they need to be cool. They need to be put in the refrigerator because that's where bacteria starts growing once they get in that temperature
So
danger
it's
zone.
time to put hot food right in your
Yeah.
refrigerator.
The only thing is the hot food's going to raise the temperature of the refrigeration unit. So a lot of times you can cool it down. Like in a restaurant, there's several different ways we tell them to cool it down first, whether in an ice bath or something like that. But you need to do something. You know, sometimes you can put it in the freezer unit, and that kind of gives it a shock to get cold faster.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
The equipment that they use in some of the restaurants, that can be contaminated.
Yeah. I mean, that's, you know, if they're not sanitizing. See, in a restaurant, they have to wash, rinse, and sanitize. They don't just wash their dishes. They either have to heat treat the dishes with the dishwasher that gets to above 180 degrees, or they have a sanitizing solution. They have a 3-compartment sink and they wash, rinse, and sanitize. And in the third sink, it could either be a chlorine solution or a quaternary ammonia solution, and their dishes have to stay in that the sanitizing compartment of the sink for a different period of time, depending on the sanitizer, before it can be air dried and put away. Yes, ma'am.
You talking about sanitizing your counters at home, should you use a chlorine solution or is it just dish liquid?
It's not a bad idea, you know. I mean, it does kill. When you clean a surface, it doesn't kill. It makes it look good, but you're not cleaning. I mean, you're not sanitizing or killing the bacteria. So it's not a bad idea. The only thing is a lot of sanitizing solution has to stay on for a certain period of time. A couple years ago, they came out with all these sanitizing products, but if you actually read solution, but, different things say, if you actually read what they say, they advertise, yeah, it kills all the bacteria, but it doesn't say how long it has to stay on there. So you really need to read the instructions.
And most of them tell you have to rinse with clean water afterwards too.
Well, no, because like in a restaurant, you don't rinse off the solution.
I know a lot of them.
They wash, they rinse, they sanitize, and then they air dry. Yeah, so. Any other, yes ma'am?
Would you hit on buying apples and bananas and cantaloupe and things being washed before you cut them off? And, because so many people say, wash your cantaloupe before you.
Well, the thing of it is, it's hard. You think about a cantaloupe, and, it's kind of gross, but cantaloupes are growing on the ground, and you don't know what sources of contamination could have occurred. So it's not a bad idea. The main thing is, once you slice your cantaloupes or chop your vegetables, to refrigerate them. So if some bacteria does get into the surface, you keep it cold enough so it's at a temperature that they don't grow. Yes, ma'am. Or rapidly grow.
I want to ask one question.
Okay.
Okay, the original Windex has ammonia in it. Is that okay to clean out your microwave? Because it keeps the glass part nice and shiny. I just wanted to find out, was it okay?
I'm just guessing. I think it probably doesn't hurt because, and this is just a guess, I don't really know, but it's probably okay because it probably evaporates once you put it on. And your food's not become
And
in
then
direct contact.
then what I do, I put hot water on top.
Yeah, I think
But I
that's,
always use some type of bleach or ammonia or something when I'm cleaning something because it seems like it picks up any grease to get rid of the grease.
yeah, and that's good, and that's gonna kill your bacteria more than just a regular, soap. Yes, sir.
What affects the bacteria on a raw salad you have on your mother?
It depends on who touched the raw salad. Who fixed it? If they washed their hands before they fixed it. And, because it can contain bacteria and virus and all. I do know that even though that pre-rinsed salad, I've heard at conferences I've been to that they say you should still wash the pre-washed stuff. I heard one of the people who's from the state lab, and she was like, oh yeah, if you want to really see a bunch of stuff, put that pre-washed salad. So I've gotten to where I really make sure I wash my pre-washed stuff.
So should we buy that product that's in the produce aisle or vegetable?
That veggie wash?
Is that better than just?
We just say, just make sure you wash it, some stuff, it's just like with hand washing and sanitizer. People say, should I use hand sanitizer? Well, nothing's going to take the place of good old washing your hands and scrubbing your hands the way you're supposed to. So, but several years ago, it became the thing, and, they sold a lot of it. But it doesn't take the place of just washing your hands. Any other questions?
Lisa,
Yes.
now, we have an experience with this bacteria called Listeria.
I know you do that.
And they say it can be on fruits. We can't just sit after that washing your fruits. But they said
Well,
Listeria can go just as well as it can in your milk.
Listeria, the bad thing with Listeria is Listeria grows at temperatures of 41, which is what the refrigeration temperature. And Listeria grows in deli meats. And because of in ready-to-eat foods, Listeria affects, the main population Listeria affects are pregnant women, and it affects the fetus. What the state does, or what the FDA does to avoid contamination with listeria. Any deli products or ready-to-eat food have a 7-day throwaway date. And everything that's kept over 24 hours is supposed to be date marked with a 7-day throwaway date. If you go in the cafeteria here, or which you're not going to, but in their kitchen, they have stuff and they've got little tags to show them what day their food has to be thrown away. And that prevents, because like listeria, even though it grows at 41, it slowly grows. And that's why you don't keep food like your deli meats or your ready-to-eat foods for a long time because of listeria. Any other questions?
I've always heard you wash your food to get the pesticides, insecticide treatments that some countries where produce comes from, they have no law, no control on how much or how little is used. All our fruit is just based from California or South America. South America has a monopoly on the market for fruit because they can produce it cheaper. They don't have apples with any defects hardly or fruit because they use over and beyond.
Well,
That alone can make you ill or sick.
well, you think about it, and people want to know why there's a rise of foodborne illnesses. It used to be people grew their own food. What they ate was what was in their backyard or their chickens or whatever. Now we get food from who knows where, and not only the pesticides, but also think of the workers. They don't have, their hygienic standards aren't what ours are. So, you don't know what's going on in the field. So that's why, one, there's more outbreaks, there's more illnesses, plus there's more media too. But you don't know what goes on in those countries.
Linda, I think you had a question.
Egg cartons, they have an expiration date. Are we supposed to throw them out?
There's different expiration dates on foods, and some is best of use by, or sell by, or there are a lot of different things, but most of them are for not food safety purposes, most of them are for quality purposes. Like they taste better if you use it within a certain period of time. And so it kind of depends on what the date stands for.
So,
So,
how long would you think that egg would be good?
Not me.
That thing is trash.
well, I go by the dates because it's just, I figure it stands for something. Yes, sir.
Which one's gonna kill you first, the pesticide or the worm inside of it?
Who knows?
Which one? When I grew up, they said if you accidentally ate a worm, don't worry about it. We got medicine in the cupboard to get rid of it. Okay? Milk is dated 2 weeks in advance when you buy it from the store.
Well-
2 weeks safe use. And I think that's the law. They have to put it on there when the expiration date.
The milk might last longer, but your milk's bad when it starts to curd or when it tastes bad. But a lot of bacteria don't smell or taste or whatever.
Well, I like milk, and I drink a gallon a week probably. And
Probably don't give it time to
every
go bad.
doctor has always said, your bones are good, you've got good, strong, whatever thing.
Well, good.
What do? I said, I drink milk every day.
Well, that's good.
Now, when the next person comes along, they don't drink milk because it's bad for you. The health people say it's bad for
You know, I believe what works for you.
Well, Lisa, I do have a question. What
Okay.
if you can, you may or may not want to answer this, but what's the most dangerous food for me to have at a restaurant?
What I think is the most dangerous thing restaurants do is have the self-service bars, because you don't know what other people have done. I mean, I've seen people cough on them. I've seen people stick their fingers in them. I've seen people, and take food and put it back in there. So that's just what you've seen. So imagine what you don't see. So to me, that's the most dangerous thing. Sorry,
The safest place to eat is what, here? Well, we hope so. We hope so. As far as I know, we've never had any problems here. But that's why, you know what, I get asked this question a lot, Lisa. When we have leftovers here, a lot of people say, can I take that to the Samaritan house or to a shut-in? And the answer is no, and sometimes it makes people upset, and I'm so glad that Lisa is here so we can discuss this today. But the reason we don't do that is everything that she talked to us about today, because it's been sitting here, we have an event, and then by the time we finish that, we've passed way past that window where it's safe to do anything with, and people say all the time, oh, what a shame to throw all that away. But
And it is, but it's really. But on the flip side, a lot. I'm not gonna go there. Never mind.
the bottom line is we don't send it out, and we do throw it away when it's over with.
Because that's the safest thing to do.
Because we don't want any of you being able to make a recording like this one we heard at the beginning, or anybody else that consumes it. So that's why we don't do that.
I have to go drive a school bus.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you have some for me?
I do. Somebody left something for her. Y'all continue. Oh, okay. Phyllis has got it back here for you.
All right. So, any more questions? We good?
Well, we'd like to thank